What's going on? I just finished watching this recent live stream of Primal Edge Health of Tristan with Durianrider and Drew Morg. 30 bananas a day versus whole foods animal-based diet. And I gotta say, man, what an entertaining stream, what a good stream. I think, Durianrider's performance was surprisingly good. I think it was actually really good. He was very calm. Almost all the time and throughout, logically consistent with his message. And yeah, if you wouldn't know Durianrider better, and you could almost expect that this is actually his real self. But there is many different layers to this personality, and if you want to get into that stuff, it is a very interesting character. You can say what you want, but it is a very interesting character, and just the way how he's kind of manipulative in a sense with his social media, the way how he works with social media to present himself and also to make money and all that kind of stuff. It's very interesting to watch this person, develop. I don't know if that's the right word that you can put for it. If you wouldn't have known him before and you would just have seen this stream, you would say that pretty much Durianrider came out as the winner of this stream, as the winner of this debate, essentially. And I don't know how this was set up essentially in the first place. I think that Drew Morg, this other guy, was actually doing a video, and Durianrider left some comments on that. And then they challenged each other for a debate, and Tristan offered himself obviously to kind of be the the moderator of the debate. That's the term, I think. But in the end, it was really like that all the three of them were debating. And actually, Tristan took quite a big part of this debate, and not a really good one, I have to say. If I would have to evaluate Tristan's performance in this debate, he showed a lot of really personal attachment to the thing. It made him look like a child, almost, at some places, because he was throwing out the same arguments over and over again. He was very interruptive very often. Durianrider stayed calm throughout all the 2 hours of the stream. I mean, he wasn't there from the first 15 minutes, I think, but he joined on like 20 minutes or something. And from there on, he was pretty much calm all the time and, just presenting his points. And Tristan was very emotional, throwing in a lot of words, also getting really, really personal from time to time, And Durianrider, for the most part, actually stayed away from that. So, yeah, I gotta give him credit for that. The other guy, Drew Morg, I don't really know what to say about him. He was kind of neutral. At some point, he tried to, play the science card, and he actually wanted to talk about the biological aspects of nutrition and, the mechanics between certain diseases and stuff like that. The really interesting stuff. Also, for me personally, this is the most interesting stuff when it comes to nutrition, and this is also why I, went down that route and did my experiments and did my, had my scientific journey, so to say, with all that things. But anyway, the guy was kind of neutral, and yeah, if I would have to evaluate the debate, I would say that Durianrider came out as the winner actually, because he was most logically consistent, and he was also pretty calm and winning a lot of arguments actually, without even making a big deal of it. And Drew Morg got kind of second, and Tristan was kind of the emotional girl of the threesome, so to say, and threw in some more or less interesting insults and stuff like that. But anyway, for this little talk here, I just wanted to give some additional comments to a couple of topics that appeared during the stream, and as usual, for people who would like to get a little bit more information to these certain topics and point out where the people made mistakes, where the people were right and stuff like that. So one of the first topics were actually teeth. I already made a whole separate talk about Durianrider's teeth and why he basically has no clue why all of his teeth are gone. And where I talked about the basic mechanics of tooth decay and why this stuff actually happens. And to wrap this up real quickly, I mean, actually we should start from the beginning, because, what I know is that Durianrider had a pretty major, surgery when it comes to his whole jaw. I think his whole lower jaw is been put to the front a little bit to counteract his overbite, which he mentioned in the video as well, by the way. He talked about his overbite shortly, and that his overbite actually ruined his teeth. I think that's BS, to be honest. teeth permanently grind at each other, and there should be no wear off because of that, essentially, unless you have a severe crooked teeth that really ruin themselves when they touch them. I can't really imagine something like that, but just because of an overbite, you shouldn't really ruin your teeth. But anyway, I think Durianrider got this overbite corrected by a surgery which was moving his lower jaw to the front a little bit. But I don't know if it was before that or after that, but at some stage in his life, he got basically all of his teeth renewed with crowns. So what I did not know is that they are crowns, actually. So crowns is basically when you just cut off the top of your teeth and leave the roots intact. So the roots are actually intact in his bone, but there's artificial crowns sitting on top of that roots, and the shiny white things that you see blinking out of Durianrider's mouth are actually artificial. However, the roots are still intact. What I believed was that he has a complete that his whole jaw is completely fake, essentially, that his only the gum was still real and the jawbone, essentially, that all of his teeth were implants. So this is something where I was wrong. Actually, I think 3 teeth or something are complete implants. He talked about that as well in the video. But however you want to put it, a lot of his tooth material is now artificial. And, for those who don't know, again, Durianrider is, I think, somewhere in his early 40s. I think he's either 42 or 43, which is a pretty young age to have, so many crowns and such, destroyed teeth that you have to replace all of these, these natural enamels to get artificial enamels on that. Just an example, I mean, if you have parents who are in your 50s, for me that's the case. My mom is, I think, around 55 or something, and my dad is 52. They both have pretty much, they have their fillings, and they have their amalgam fillings and all that kind of unideal stuff, but, they don't have completely artificial teeth, and, all of their crowns are renewed, basically. And, this was 5 years ago or something that this happened for Durianrider, or 4 or 3 years or something. So he was basically 40 when that happened, okay? So this is quite early. What kind of lifestyle could ruin your teeth that fast? This is the question that really arises there. It shouldn't be the case that your teeth get destroyed so quickly. And as he mentions, he is already vegan for, 18 years or something. So he was vegan way before his teeth, started to crumble, essentially. So it could well be that the vegan diet has something to do with that. And, as we know, with a lot of fruitarians and stuff and long-term vegans, a lot of grains, a lot of blood sugar spikes. I've talked about how teeth get worn off, or how teeth get essentially melted off from the inside. This happens because, of blood sugar spikes, insulin spikes. Your body has to counterbalance this osmotic change of the blood with, leaching calcium out of your bones, which is no problem if you have calcium supply, essentially, the necessary calcium supply, and also the fat-soluble vitamins for your body to know where it has to put this calcium that you take up. But when you permanently spike your blood sugar and you have to release calcium into your bloodstream, you're also gonna piss. You're also gonna piss a bit of water in the meantime, and that means you're gonna have a net loss of calcium because you're essentially pissing out calcium through your kidneys if you're in that state, like, almost permanently. And as a vegan, we know we don't really get a lot of absorbable calcium right there. We're getting a little bit of calcium, that's true. However, we also combine this calcium usually with a shit ton of anti-nutrients, which are going to inhibit us to take up this calcium. So it only makes sense from a nutritional standpoint to believe that this is a simple, symptom of calcium malnutrition. If you develop something like severe tooth decay, this also has nothing to do with dental hygiene, as Durianrider points out, or something like dry mouth, which is a cyclist problem because, you got all the wind and then your mouth dries out and stuff like that. I don't know, man. If you have proper saliva production and you're not sitting on your bike like 24/7, I can't really imagine how this factors into, tooth decay. But he is correct in that your mouth needs to have proper saliva. Also, the quality of your saliva matters a lot. The consistency of your saliva and the nutrients that are dissolved in your saliva actually play a big role in your teeth. How the health of your teeth is essentially. And I've talked about all these factors in this other talk about Durianrider's teeth. But anyway, this is something that I don't agree with Durianrider. Durianrider has really good arguments here. He says that, look at the people who are in a doctor's office, in a dental office. In maybe 0.1% of them are vegan. Yeah, because that's because 0.1% of the general population is vegan, a very low percentage. And still, despite that, all of this population is eating a shit ton of carbs, a shit ton of grains, fruits, and whatnot. Also processed foods, all full of sugar and wheat and carbs, And to claim that this is because, this is essentially why you get just the same problems as if you would be something like a raw carnivore or primal diet eater or something. It's kind of close-minded in my opinion. For me, this displays simply as a calcium deficiency in your teeth, obviously, if your teeth are rotting away. Then if your enamel retracts and becomes rough, then there's coming certain bacteria which are now able to inhabit this area and start to wear off your tooth even further, Start also to get rid of this residual material that is left over once your calcification retracts. And this is how these black spots evolve. And we see with people who are changing their diet up from a, really carb heavy diet to a more, something that incorporates raw milk from time to time, okay? Something very simple like that. You don't even have to adapt your diet completely. You just have to add back in this really utilizable calcium to your diet. And usually these lesions, these black spots, they become stationary, so they don't develop any further, they don't grow into your teeth any further. So this is what we usually see when when people are getting back on a really easily absorbable calcium supply, something like raw milk, which also has the fat-soluble vitamins in it to make your body able to utilize that calcium. But anyway, so much about the teeth topic. Another thing that was discussed was veganism and injuries. Why does Durianrider not run anymore, I would ask here. In the stream, I think he talked about a running race that he just won recently. But as far as I followed Durianrider in the past, and he was always recommending to people that they should cycle. Instead of running, do cycling, because it's much more low impact. And you're gonna ruin your ankles, you're gonna ruin your knees when you're running, and all that kind of stuff, And I have to agree with him here. Running is a high impact sport, and usually, these vegans do not very well on high impact sports, because sooner or later they get injured and they have problems with injuries healing. This is very, very true, and I bet you Durianrider actually has some sort of the same experience with that. And again, Durianrider is only 42 years old. That's not super young, but it's also not super old. You should still have some decent tissue recovery even in that stage of your life. So what's the deal with that? Durianrider is much more of a cycler. He would argue now that, cycling is more adventurous. You can get more mileage in with less effort and all that kind of stuff. And I have to agree with him here. However, I would say, is this the only part of the story, or does he simply avoid, getting these wearing out symptoms which you usually get when you're vegan and doing high impact sports? The other guy, Drew Morg, talked about his injury, which didn't get away, which didn't heal essentially, even after staying away from his sport for like 6 months or something. It wouldn't heal. And I can very well understand that. There's a lot of people showing the same experiences on other high-impact sports. I think Drew Morg was talking even about cycling here with the hamstring thing or something. But there's also people from rock climbing, there's people from martial arts and all that kind of stuff, where a lot of flexibility is involved in general. And we see this kind of stiffness. Although, they are super lean and, shredded to the bones, essentially, these long-term high-carb vegans, they have this certain stiffness in their body because they are not lubricated, I think, because lubrication really comes from proper fats and not really from so much water. But anyway, yeah, I can really understand why he brings up the veganism and injuries topic here. And I want to say that Durianrider is a specialist for low-impact sports, one of the most low-impact sports of them all, which is cycling, actually. Okay, so Durianrider doesn't really wear down the spare parts of his machine, so to say. He only burns fuel. He essentially only burns fuel, which doesn't really require him to switch out some spare parts, okay? He doesn't really need to repair his whole engine from time to time or something because he gets injured or he has an impact or something. So this is a completely different story. And this also, brings me to the next point, which is the testosterone thing, essentially. Durianrider says you can put on muscle like that without any building blocks. You just need to use gear, essentially, and you're gonna build muscle out of nowhere. You're gonna puff up like crazy, even though you're still eating like 50 grams of protein per day. I would say this is actually, without having any personal experience from this topic whatsoever, but from watching other people doing that stuff, I can only say this is some sort of truth is in that. I think you can blow up quite quickly without even eating anything. Okay, I don't know if you're familiar with allergic reactions or something like that, but if you're having an allergic reaction to something, for example, a bee sting or anything like that, the sheer potential of your body to swell is amazing without you adding anything to the body, okay? Your face can swell to triple its size, essentially, in a matter of minutes, okay? When this toxin gets spread around the body and certain inflammation markers get released, the histamines and stuff like that, these cells have an ability to swell. It's fantastic, it's amazing. I don't know why the body does that, because it's actually pretty dangerous, because certain swellings can block your breathing paths, and then you can basically, die from that stuff. But the ability of your body to swell up is quite fascinating, essentially, and it has to do with, relocating water. Also certain proteins probably have the ability to expand quite a lot, and all that kind of stuff. So I can't really disagree with him here. Testosterone probably has a very anabolic effect quite instantly, and simply will, by relocation of water into your muscles, which he talks about himself, make you blow up kind of instantly. And if you're taking up all those 50 grams of protein that you're still eating per day, 50 grams per day is a lot. That's half a kilo in a week, essentially, or in 10 days to be exact. But if you would utilize that 100%, you would gain basically a kilo of muscle protein per week. And as we know, muscle consists only like to 25% of protein or something like that. The rest is water, and you store that water quite easily. You just need to have a drink, essentially. So if you're getting kind of thirsty and getting the protein in, taking that up and swell up like a balloon, essentially, I could very well imagine that from taking steroids. And as he said himself, he has experience with that stuff. So there's no real need to doubt that here, I would say. The thing is, with respect to long-term sustainability, if you want to do something like a high-impact sport that is going to wear down your tissues from time to time as well, either by injury or simply because you're getting hit or something like that during a martial arts fight or whatever, you gotta replenish at some point these easily digestible proteins, these easily digestible calcium, atoms to make your bone density, keep your bone density up, essentially, and all that kind of stuff, to essentially build a robust body. And this is something that's really a home driver for me. The way Durianrider looks doesn't suggest health to me, or at least not as much health as he could have, because he seems so frail and thin and, breakable essentially. He doesn't really have this robust look to him, which you can spot on the spot essentially when you look at people, And this is just the thing with these vegans or with these endurance athletes. They are perfectly well adapted to their sport. There's no doubt about it. They are perfect carb burners and fat burners essentially. But they are really, really frail and fragile, and I wouldn't want to live in such a body, to be honest. It would give me a sense of insecurity and, not being really grounded and all that kind of stuff. And to build this kind of body long term, I think you have to have this constant supply of, good building blocks, essentially. You need to build that body up from the ground and, put in the work and all that kind of stuff for a long, long time. Just as well as you getting this lean greyhound look by, leaving out that stuff for a really, really long time. Durianrider is just a perfect example for this. Now, about ethics and dumpster diving, this was actually a pretty interesting point where I have to say Durianrider is absolutely correct and Tristan is absolutely wrong, because Durianrider said that it is okay, it is ethically correct to feed your cats meat from the dumpster. And this is perfectly ethical. This is actually the most ethically possible way to, get to animal products. If you consider human ethics as, the epitome of ethics, which is not the case for me, as I said in my natural ethics versus human ethics talk, where I explained essentially that nature doesn't give a shit about animal suffering and stuff like that, just like nature doesn't give a shit about your suffering. For nature, it's essentially, survive or die, and whatever is necessary to perform that is in the ethical realm of nature, because that's what's getting rewarded the most by nature in the end, But anyway, inside the realm of human ethics, getting meat from the dumpster is actually the most ethical way to get to animal products, or, getting cheese from the dumpster for that matter, or whatever, Just as well as, there is no problem from an ethical standpoint to eat an egg that free-roaming chickens just lay left, right, and center. They're popping eggs left, right, and center. Otherwise, it would just rot, So why let it rot? You can also just simply eat it, There's no ethical difference here in that, even in the realm of human ethics. So Durianrider is correct with that, and I don't know why Tristan got so upset about that, but this is vegans would even still consider that vegan, If veganism really is purely about ethics, then these eggs are completely vegan. Durianrider says himself he doesn't eat them because they don't give him the performance and they don't give him the health that he wants to achieve with his diet. But from an ethical standpoint, these are no problem, and I have to agree with him here. These are no problem. Then there comes a rather interesting section about digestion. I would say both camps are essentially correct here. You can have pretty awesome digestion on a vegan diet, actually. And you also can you can have really awesome digestion on a carnivore diet, essentially. So to give you my personal perspective, I, experienced both and I've tried both, and there's absolutely nothing wrong in either of these cases. The big difference, however, is that you're definitely shitting more on a vegan diet. That's true, and that only makes sense because you're eating way more fiber than on a carnivore diet. You are also going to shit more often, but for me personally, that's not really an indicator whether your digestion is good or not. The question is, do you have any pains? Do you have super intense bloating or stuff like that? And I have to say both of these diets can work pretty well. Both are correct here. You can have pretty good digestion as a vegan and as a carnivore. However, there is a problem when people start mixing raw foods, because you can't really mix raw foods of the plant kingdom with raw foods from the animal kingdom in the same meal or stuff like that, because these get digested in completely different environments. Raw fruits get digested, and vegetables as well get digested in an alkaline environment, while raw animal products are extremely acid forming in your digestive tract and get digested in an acidic environment. Now we could debate which one of these two is more healthy in the long run. However, I would argue that if you're on a cooked vegan diet, you're still predominantly having an acidic digestive environment, at least as long as things are working well. And obviously, for Durianrider, it seems to still work quite well. What I suppose is that at some point, for most people, if they go down this vegan route and try a little bit more fruit, getting into the more alkaline environment with their digestive environment, they get problems digesting the cooked vegan foods, because those actually need acids. And also, if slowly but surely their stomach and everything turns more and more alkaline, they become more susceptible to, certain parasites and stuff. And if those guys enter the game, it's really a bit of luck there. You can have good ones, you can have bad ones, you can have ones that you don't even notice. And if you have bad ones, you can have all sorts of issues. You can all of a sudden do not tolerate any grains anymore, for example, because these parasites are going to feed on that, then they're going to poo in your poo, then they're going to provoke certain reactions with that. So if these guys are at play, then it becomes really blurry and really hard to say whether this is now because you're eating this kind of diet, or because it's something in your digestive tract, some sort of, not ideal microbiome that doesn't really react in a proper way with what you're eating, And then there's also, of course, other factors like stress and, maybe an organ, a digestive organ, whatever is damaged, maybe the gallbladder, maybe the pancreas or whatnot, which could impact your digestion regardless of what you're eating, okay? So then it's getting tricky, but principally, if everything is working 100%, I think that you can, on either diet, have pretty good digestion. To give you a little bit of my final conclusions to the stream and to not make this response here super long, I want to say that Durianrider himself in the past said that actually people should at least pretend they're vegan, even if they are not, to save the planet from overpopulation, from using up too many resources and stuff like that. And, that's why I would say, who knows, Durianrider is also really, really good at lying and deceiving people. And if you have a little bit of, knowledge about human behavior and how certain rhetorics work and how certain mimics work and stuff like that, how social media works and stuff, you can see that, okay? You can see it in his eyes. Just look at him, look at him very, very closely. He seems very genuine and very honest during that stream. He conveys himself pretty well. And again, if I would have known only that stream, if I would have known him only through that stream, I would still say he's probably the most logical and the most calm and the most consistent person during that stream there, However, I know his past a little bit, and he is a really good deceiver. He's a very good social manipulator. So I can't really say that he was really vegan for all that time, The vast majority of data points show that most people are failing on a vegan diet. There is hardly anyone who makes it beyond 5 years, okay, on this diet. So he is an absolute exception there. He's a real absolute exception. So who knows, just this fact alone makes what he does really doubtful for most people and for me as well. That's why I can't really tell you for sure, that he's honest when he's talking about 18 years of veganism. Just as well as there is fishy stuff going on with his steroid use, Sometimes he told people about it, sometimes he didn't, sometimes other people told people about it, and then, only then he came out with it and stuff like that. So he would, of course, always refute what I say now here, but that's just how it comes across. And he's also inconsistent as far as ecology goes. I mean, yes, shipping bananas to Europe from, South America is an ecological disaster. Not only for, the whole environment and the CO2 of the ships and whatnot, but also for the environment in South America where these bananas are coming from, where they're getting sprayed, where the people, suffering from horrible working conditions on these fields and stuff like that, where, probably rainforest is getting cleared to be able to grow more bananas and stuff like that, So it's not that black and white. It's not fact that fruit is always better. And then he suggests that, over there in Norway and in Iceland, people should build glass houses to grow fruit and stuff. What a stupid idea. I mean, you could make so much more ethical and so much more less ecologically disastrous foods in Iceland from animal products. You're simply letting some sheep graze on that meadows there. You get some milk, get some meat, and it's all local, it's all ethical, probably has a far smaller, ecological footprint than anything he suggests. And yeah, this is where he is really ecologically inconsistent, because he assumes that all grass-fed animals destroys the environment, and that for all grass-fed animals some kind of forest had to be cleared to be able to hold, to be able to let these animals graze, which is not the case at all. Okay, there is natural meadows. A meadow is a natural ecological habitat. There is different, insects and different animal species who are specialized in meadows. Okay, they have always existed, and of course, maybe there's more now that we have humanity on this planet. But it's still, minute probably compared to all these wheat and corn fields that are out there, which are again used to feed animals for us to eat, which is not good, which is not good. These animals shouldn't eat corn and wheat in the first place. So this is already a crime against nature, essentially. However, I mean, that's just how it rolls nowadays. And if you want to be an ethical carnivore, so to say, you cannot support this, of course. You always want to support local grass-fed farming methods, because this is what ultimately will help you to, get the healthiest food in a sense, and will also be the least ecologically disastrous. Now, is there enough land for all people to eat grass-fed animals, grass-fed animal products? I doubt it, to be honest, because we are already a hell lot of people on this planet. Is that really an argument? The fact that there are these many people on this planet is already a natural state to begin with, and not good. I don't even want that, Here I am on board with Durianrider again, who is a very big fan of vasectomies and stuff like that, to reduce population size. And I would argue, if an individual like him gets a vasectomy, who actually sees through all that stuff, his impact on the future of this planet is actually pretty damn minute. He could also have a few children, raise them ethically, and teach them how to source ethical food, teach them how to teach other people how to source ethical food and stuff like that. This way he would have a much greater impact probably on positive developments in the future. However, like this, he just simply spreads this message of veganism, which is not sustainable for most people anyway. And again, even if everybody would feed corn and would eat corn and wheat, we would still hit some borders like that anyway, maybe a little bit more distant in the future, but we would still hit the border, because again, these corn fields and wheat fields are extremely destructive to the environment and kill a lot of animals at the same time. So yeah, there's a lot of problems with that, and it's not that black and white, Also, his tendency to push processed foods, pushing things like Sprite and huge companies, who do a hell lot of destruction on this planet. I don't know what he thinks about that, but that's definitely unethical, and that's definitely problematic when it comes to ecological lifestyle, you know. And he can live in his shed and, you know, in his small little building all he wants. If he promotes that over the internet to 200,000 people, I mean, that's a huge negative impact right there. And finally, it's simply just the way he looks. I mean, there is not a lot of people who want to look like that, you know. His results are not that, are not something that most people would strive for willingly, you know. What he could do, what would be really impressive, is if he would just simply change sports to a high impact strength based sport and then gain some grounding, you know, gain some size, gain some mass, gain some proper, you know, tissue, and prove that way that his healthy vegan diet can do basically anything, you know. And it is completely independent from the building blocks, because, you know, everything works on a vegan diet and so on and so forth. Now, of course, that's not possible, and that's why we're never gonna see him do that. But that would actually be a pretty damn cool move of him to do that without the use of steroids, of course, and all that kind of stuff. Which, you know, yeah, again, it's really hard to prove that he does it because he has experience with that already in the past. That's essentially it. Just a couple of things that I want to throw out for people to think about here. Bye.